On February 1st, 2008, a horrifying crime shook a quiet suburban neighborhood in Baltimore County, Maryland. A 15-year-old boy, Nicholas Browning, committed an unthinkable act, murdering his entire family in cold blood. His father, mother and two younger brothers were found shot to death in their home, while Nicholas spent the night at a friend's house, pretending as though nothing had happened. The case stunned the nation, not just because of its brutality, but because Nicholas Browning appeared to be an ordinary teenager. He was a Boy Scout, a decent student, and came from an affluent, well-respected family. Yet behind this seemingly normal exterior, a deep resentment festered within him, one that led to a chillingly calculated act of violence. This case raises many unsettling questions. How does a young teenager reach a point where he can murder his own family without remorse? Were there warning signs? What drove Nicholas to commit such an atrocity? And what does his case reveal about juvenile justice and the psychology of adolescent killers? This is the tragic and shocking story of Nicholas Browning, the 15-year-old mass killer. Nicholas Browning was born into a privileged and seemingly stable family. His father, John Browning, was a successful lawyer, well regarded in the Baltimore legal community. His mother, Tamara Browning, was a loving homemaker who dedicated herself to raising their three children, Nicholas and his two younger brothers, Gregory and Benjamin. They lived in an upper-middle-class neighborhood where crime was rare and life was peaceful. By most accounts, Nicholas was an average teenager. He attended Dulaney High School, participated in extracurricular activities, and was a Boy Scout. However, those who knew him described him as somewhat withdrawn, not particularly outgoing, and struggling with deep-seated anger issues. Some friends noticed that he would often express frustration with his parents, especially his father. John Browning, a strict disciplinarian, reportedly held high expectations for his son. Nicholas, on the other hand, resented his father's controlling nature and the pressure placed on him to succeed. He perceived his father as overbearing and demanding, creating a rift between them. At school, Nicholas had a small but close-knit group of friends. He wasn't known to have violent tendencies, nor did he show signs of being a troubled child. Yet beneath the surface, he harbored dark thoughts that would soon explode in a horrifying act of violence. Nicholas's resentment toward his father, and possibly his entire family, would ultimately manifest in one of the most disturbing crimes in Maryland's history. On the evening of February 1st, 2008, Nicholas Browning spent time with his friends at a sleepover, acting as if everything was completely normal. No one could have imagined that just hours before, he had carried out a gruesome massacre inside his own home. According to his confession, Nicholas returned home that night, calmly walked into his father's bedroom and retrieved his father's .25 caliber handgun. Without hesitation, he approached his sleeping father, John Browning, and shot him in the head. His father never saw it coming. After the first gunshot, Nicholas didn't stop. He then moved to his mother's room, where his mother, Tamara, lay asleep. He pulled the trigger once more, killing her instantly. His younger brothers, Gregory, 13, and Benjamin, 11, were next. Nicholas coldly executed them as they slept, ensuring no one in the house was left alive. Once the murders were complete, Nicholas hid the gun in a wooded area near his home. He then left the house, met up with his friends, and spent the night at a friend's house, as if nothing had happened. He laughed, played video games, and acted like a typical teenager. The following day, Nicholas returned home with his friends. Upon entering the house, he pretended to discover the bodies and immediately called 911, playing the role of a shocked and devastated son. However, as the police began their investigation, cracks in Nicholas's story started to show. His calm demeanor, lack of genuine emotion, and inconsistencies in his account quickly raised suspicions. It wouldn't take long for detectives to unravel the horrifying truth: that Nicholas Browning was not a grieving son, but a cold-blooded killer. From the moment authorities arrived at the Browning household, something about Nicholas's behavior didn't sit right with them. Unlike a typical grieving child, he showed little emotion, no tears, no visible signs of distress. His demeanor was calm, almost indifferent. Investigators took note of his detached attitude and inconsistencies in his story. Nicholas initially claimed that he had spent the night at a friend's house and had no idea what had happened. But as detectives questioned him, his story began to unravel. His timeline didn't match, and his lack of emotion stood out. Detectives pressed him harder, and within hours, Nicholas broke down and confessed to killing his entire family. In a chilling admission, Nicholas described the murders in disturbing detail. He admitted to shooting his father first because he felt that his father was too strict and controlling, but what shocked investigators most was his lack of remorse. When asked why he killed his mother and two younger brothers, he simply shrugged. Was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. His case would now move to the courts, where the debate over whether he should be tried as a juvenile or an adult would take center stage. Following his confession, Nicholas Browning was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. Due to the severity of the crime, prosecutors pushed for him to be tried as an adult rather than as a juvenile. Despite being only 15 years old, his crime was deemed too brutal and premeditated for juvenile court. His defense team initially explored the possibility of an insanity plea, but psychological evaluations found that Nicholas was mentally competent and fully aware of his actions at the time of the murders. With little room for defense, Nicholas ultimately pleaded guilty to the charges to avoid the death penalty or a longer sentence. On October 14, 2009, Nicholas Browning was sentenced to 4 life terms in prison, with 2 of them set to run consecutively and 2 concurrently. This meant that he would serve at least 2 full life sentences before being eligible for parole. During sentencing, Nicholas showed little emotion, much like he had during the investigation. The judge and prosecutors emphasized the cold and calculated nature of his crimes, highlighting his lack of remorse and the methodical way he executed his family. Despite his sentence, Nicholas Browning remains eligible for parole review after serving a minimum of life plus 30 years. Whether he will ever be released is another question entirely. With the legal process concluded, the case of Nicholas Browning turned into a chilling example of a teenager capable of committing unspeakable violence. The case of Nicholas Browning raises critical psychological questions. What drives a seemingly normal teenager to commit such a gruesome act? Were there warning signs? Could this have been prevented? Psychologists and criminologists analyzed Nicholas's behavior and found several alarming factors that could have contributed to his actions. While he did not exhibit classic signs of a violent sociopath, his detachment from emotion, lack of remorse, and calculated approach suggested deeper psychological issues. One theory is that Nicholas harbored deep resentment toward his father. Friends later recalled that he frequently complained about his father's strict rules and high expectations. However, instead of expressing this frustration in a healthy way, he suppressed it until it exploded in the worst possible manner. Some experts suggested that Nicholas may have suffered from an undiagnosed personality disorder, such as antisocial personality disorder or narcissistic tendencies. His ability to commit the murders without hesitation, calmly spend time with friends afterward, and fabricate a false story suggests a lack of empathy and emotional detachment. Another psychological aspect of this case is the role of materialism and entitlement. Nicholas reportedly believed that killing his parents would give him access to their wealth, allowing him to live without restrictions. This indicates a highly distorted moral compass, where he saw his family as obstacles rather than loved ones. While Nicholas never received a formal diagnosis of a severe psychiatric disorder, his behavior fits the pattern of a cold, calculated killer with an extreme lack of remorse. His case remains an eerie reminder that even seemingly normal teenagers can harbor dark, deadly thoughts beneath the surface. The Nicholas Browning case quickly became national news, shocking communities across the country. The idea that a 15-year-old boy could methodically murder his entire family was horrifying, and the media latched onto every detail. News outlets portrayed Nicholas as a privileged but cold and calculating killer, emphasizing his lack of remorse and the chilling manner in which he carried out the murders. The story gained traction in both local and national news, with headlines describing him as the teenage family slayer. The public reaction was a mix of outrage, disbelief, and horror. Many people struggled to understand how a boy from an affluent, seemingly loving family could commit such an atrocity. Others pointed to the pressures of strict parenting and mental health issues as possible explanations. In the legal and psychological communities, the case sparked discussions about juvenile sentencing. Should Nicholas Browning have been given a chance at rehabilitation, or was his crime so heinous that he deserved to spend his life behind bars? For the Browning family's extended relatives and friends, the murders were devastating. The tragedy left an unfillable void in their lives, while the community mourned the loss of a well-respected family at the hands of their own son. Nicholas Browning is currently incarcerated at the North Branch Correctional Institution in Cumberland, Maryland, serving his life sentences for the murder of his family. Since his imprisonment, he has remained largely out of the public eye, with no major updates regarding his case. One of the biggest questions surrounding his imprisonment is whether he will ever be granted parole. While he is serving 2 life sentences consecutively, meaning he will likely never be released, health, and the impact of strict parenting on adolescent behavior. Ultimately, Nicholas Browning's story serves as a haunting reminder that even in the most peaceful neighborhoods, darkness can lurk behind closed doors, and sometimes the most unimaginable horrors come from those we least expect.